Well, good morning and welcome to Thrive Online, wherever it is that you may be this morning and however you may be watching, on your phone, on your laptop, on that bigger than life TV that you've got in the living room, wherever it is. We just encourage you to sing along with us this morning. We're going to start your morning off with some Christmas songs. So grab your eggnog, grab your Christmas cookies, grab your jingle bells, and let's make this happen. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Shepherds, by this jubilee, why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? Gloria in excelsis Deo. Excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee, Christ the Lord, the newborn King. Sing excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Good morning and welcome to Thrive Online. We are so glad you're here. We're so glad you're here. I'm Rachel and I'm the host this morning. They always say to plug something interesting about yourself. This morning I have a thing to plug. Ooh, I now have an inside cat that was supposed to be a barn cat. Huh, Olaf? Are you spoiled? That's what I thought. Okay. Anyways, hi, good morning. So, some few things before we really get started. Connect cards. These are super important to fill out. So there's going to be a link in the comments below that should get pinned. That way, when you scroll, it doesn't go anywhere. It'll say thrivechurchmi.com/connect. This is the best way for you to get involved with groups, volunteering, whatever that may be. If you are in need of something, this is the best way to let us know. Prayer requests, like I know my family, especially in the last few weeks, we've really needed prayer requests, and I have felt every single one of them because I plugged it into a Connect card. So Connect card, especially if you're new, we want to know you're here. We want to get you involved and we want to welcome you here. So Connect card, thrivechurchmi.com/connect. Also, while you're here, make sure you're engaging, guys. It sucks being online. I know it sucks. There's no way to like sugarcoat that. It doesn't matter how much coffee you drink or cookies that you dip in your coffee while you're here. Like it's not as fun as being in person. We get it. But some things you can do to make it better are share it on your personal page. That way more people are here to watch and comment. That's my next one, plug. Comment with you. So share it so that your friends can comment and you guys can talk about church together. Or if there's just like a really awesome piece and you're watching the live feed, You can push the little emoji buttons as many times as you want, and they like rain up the screen. It's kind of like a backwards rain. So comment, share, engage. We're so glad you guys are here. So let's enjoy church together.
Savior's birth. Well, it has been an exciting week here at Thrive. This last Tuesday was Giving Tuesday, and we put out a challenge for all of our church. If we could raise $4,000, that $4,000 would be matched and doubled and become an $8,000 gift toward the kickoff of our 2020 year-end giving challenge. And guess what? We showed up. We rose to the occasion. The generosity of this church won again. And because of the way that you've taken care of this church, the way that you're taking care of our community, we are able to give away resources as this holiday season approaches to people who need it, to families who need a little extra assistance, to organizations that are doing good in our area, to schools, to families, to all sorts of different organizations that we know could benefit from a little extra help as 2020 comes to a close. So thank you for your generosity. If you missed it, our year-end giving challenge is to raise $20,000 to help do good and spread joy in Central Michigan, to do good, to take care of the needs of the people all around us, and to spread joy by continuing and furthering and advancing the ministry of Thrive in Central Michigan. And so every dollar that's coming in will be split between those two different projects to see lives changed all throughout Central Michigan. We couldn't be more excited. And so I'll invite you and continue to spur you on to give as the year comes to a close, as 2020 wraps up, that we can give toward this $20,000 year-end giving challenge to do good and to spread joy in Central Michigan. I'll also encourage you, keep up the generosity in general. Keep giving toward the ministry of this church, because when you give, we are able to put the gospel in front of people, we're able to share the love of Christ, and we're able to see lives changed in unbelievable ways. This week, we're able to join in with Christian Counseling of Mid-Michigan and give them a generous gift. We know that counseling is a big issue. Mental health is a big thing right now. And so because of your generosity, we're going to be partnering with them, and we're going to help them as they move into a new office building, help them get settled, and help them take care of the mental health needs of people around us. We're also partnering with two families from the Mount Pleasant High School who need extra assistance in this holiday season. So we're going to help them with financial gifts, with some physical gifts, and help take care of them in this Christmas season. And then we're also going to help, there's a boy who approached us who is trying to raise funds for a therapy dog for himself, a boy with some severe autism. And we have the opportunity to help provide the needs by aiding in their challenge, aiding in their goal of raising the funds they need to bring in a therapy dog for this boy. And so you are able to help with that. We love kids. We love helping people with special needs and people who have a little extra assistance that they need to help them do life. And so we are there with them. We're there for them. And your generosity is making that possible. In fact, it says this, I was reminded of this week from 1 John 3. It says, "We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but no one shows compassion, how can God's love be seen in that person?" Dear children, let's not merely say we love each other. Let's show the truth by our actions. When we do good, when we invest in life change, we are showing God's love in actions. We're showing it in a very tangible way that allows people to see that there is someone who cares for them. There's someone who knows that this isn't all about us. This is about the work that God is doing in our midst and the work that God can do through this generosity. And so I thank you, and I thank you, and I thank you for your giving and your generosity making that possible. Today I'm going to invite you to give to the General Ministry Fund at thrivechurchmi.com/give, or you can give to the year-end fund, and I'll encourage you to give to both, to continue to dig in to generosity, to continue to do good in this area. And let's show the love of Jesus by the way that we take care of people with our giving. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, Thrive Church, Jacob here. We're in our week 2 of this series called Playlists, and we sang earlier the song "O Holy Night," and we've been kind of going through the book of Psalms. We're going to be in the Psalms chapter 2 tonight, but we sang "O Holy Night" a little bit earlier, and one of the things our family loves to do, my son Max loves to look up random facts about things, and so I kind of thought it'd be kind of fun to look up some of random facts about "O Holy Night." And it's actually kind of interesting because the song actually has a little bit of controversial history to it. So like just as a little bit of an introduction, like let's find out a little bit more about the song "O Holy Night." So "O Holy Night," it's kind of interesting how it was first written and created. So there was this church in a small town in southern France that just got their organ like renovated, restored, something along that line. As a part of the celebration, they asked a local poet to write a Christmas poem for their service, celebrating their organ getting repaired and fixed and renovated and restored. And so they asked this poet, Chapeau, the poet to write this poem. And so he was reading kind of the book of Luke. And as he was reading the story of Jesus' birth, he was trying to imagine himself being there in that moment. He was so moved by that moment. And that's what kind of came out of the song, the lyrics, at least, "O Holy Night." As he was imagining himself being there, he kind of wrote it. And as he was writing it, he was so moved by it that he actually reached out to a classical musician in France to compose the poem, to put some music to the song. And so he reached out to Adolphe Adams, who was a classical musician, and he was a Jewish man in France. And then he actually composed the song. So it was kind of interesting. But what happened is a couple years later, it started getting really popular, and the church found out that the writer, Chapeau, was not a member of the church and was actually kind of outspoken against the church. And I guess you can kind of say maybe even atheist or something along that line. And then they found out that the composer was a Jewish man who didn't really believe that Jesus was the Messiah. So the church actually banned the song "O Holy Night" in France. And so it wasn't allowed to be played in the churches then. But just a few years later, an American by the name of John Sullivan Dwight first heard the song in 1855, and he actually transcribed it into what we know now as "O Holy Night." And the reason he fell in love with this song, it was during the Civil War era, and he loved the song so much because of verse 3, where it talks about his law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother. And in his name all oppression shall cease. And so he transposed it, began to play it, began to circulate it. And then it was even a few years later in 1906. This is what I just think is just absolutely fascinating. 1906 was the first ever radio broadcast. 1906, the first ever radio broadcast in America. And "O Holy Night" was the very first song ever played. I mean, that's just kind of a cool little moment, little thought here. Just some of those random facts. I hope you can appreciate those. That "O Holy Night" actually has a little bit of a history, and a little bit of a controversial history at that. So I think that's kind of interesting. But anyways, we're going to be kind of talking about Psalms chapter 2 and talking about "O Holy Night." And really, Psalms chapter 2 talks a lot about the prophecy of the Messiah. Now, if you're kind of like me and you start looking into prophecy and you dig into Psalms 2, I hope you will later this week, read through Psalms kind of 2, you're kind of like, you're looking at it going like, what? How does this pertain to the prophecy of Jesus, the Messiah? And, quite often, really to understand the prophecy of the Old Testament, quite often we actually have to jump forward to the New Testament to see where that pertains to the prophecy before we can really kind of get a grasp on it. But a lot of times I'm so overwhelmed by those moments and not really understanding it. But when we go forward into the New Testament is when we can actually really see where that prophecy comes true. And so this week we're going to be in Psalms chapter 2, and it plays a really important role into the prophecy of the Messiah because it kind of has more than just one prophecy. I kind of called it the trifecta of prophecy because scholars look at Psalms chapter 2, and it's one of the few chapters that actually has multiple prophecies in it. And so we're just going to kind of briefly look at this. You'll go into more detail this week in the book Core 52 into behind Psalms chapter 2. So I just kind of want to briefly highlight it to kind of lay some groundwork for us. So let's just kind of hit some of the highlights. So verses 1 and 2 are cited in the believer's prayer in Acts chapter 4 as a commentary during Jesus's trial. And then the second part of prophecy is actually our key scripture, and it's Psalms chapter 2, verse 7. And the NIV here reads, Psalms chapter 2, verse 7 reads, "You are my son, today I have become your father." Now, this becomes prophecy because this is actually paraphrased in the Gospels, both at Jesus' baptism and at his transfiguration. And so the interesting thing is it's actually paraphrased in all three Gospels. So all three of the Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the writers, felt it was so important that all three of them included this. And so at Jesus' baptism, the scripture says, "And a voice from heaven said, 'This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased.'" And we see that in all three of the Matthew, Mark, Luke. And then the second time it is done is at Jesus' transfiguration. And it said, and the scripture says, "While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, 'This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him.'" Now, it's really important to understand why this is such an important prophecy, because during Jesus' ministry, there's only 3 times that God spoke audibly. So during Jesus's approximately 3 years of ministry, there's only 3 times that God spoke audibly. And 2 of those times are a paraphrase to Psalms chapter 2, verse 7, where he says, "This is my son who I'm well pleased." So it's really important going back to what Psalms 2:7 in the prophecy. Now, the third in that trifecta of prophecy in chapter 2, Psalms chapter 2, verse 9, is cited 3 different times in the book of Revelations to describe the rule of Jesus. And so right there in this small little chapter, only a few verses, we have 3 prophecies. And so it's kind of like the trifecta of prophecy there. But let's just focus in today on the prophecy of the Messiah. And that brings us to kind of the big idea today of it's only Jesus. It's only Jesus. There's only one way. Only Jesus could have fulfilled all the prophecies. And when you begin to, and we're going to kind of get into just briefly a little bit of the history and prophecy and all that kind of stuff to kind of lay some additional groundwork. But when you realize it could only be Jesus that fulfilled all these prophecies. So if we were to look at only 7 of the prophecies, now there's well over 50 major prophecies on Jesus, but if we were to pick out just 7 of the major prophecies in the Bible that tell us about the Messiah, let's look at this, and we're going to pick out the 7 that in Core 52 that he kind of highlights through there. And so it's in your book, Core 52, this upcoming week, but you'll look at them. But just really quickly, they're kind of, if we look at, it was prophesied that he'd be born in Bethlehem, that he would be preceded by a forerunner, that he was preceded by John the Baptist, that he'd be betrayed by a friend, which would result in his hands being wounded, that he would be sold for 30 pieces of silver, and which would be given over to a potter. The 6th one, to stand silent before his oppressors, and 7, to actually die of a crucifixion. Now, if we just pick out those 7 and look at them, Peter Stoner in his book called Science Speaks calculated out the probabilities. Now, if you're one of those type of people that love numbers and love probabilities, get this. He looked at those and he said, if we only pick those 7, he said, the odds of Jesus fulfilling that prophecy are 1 to 100 quadrillion. 100 quadrillion. That is 17 zeros. 1 and 17 zeros. That's a lot. And so to try and put it in perspective, I was actually looking up on the internet, and I found this kind of fascinating, that you would have just like slightly better odds at winning in the lottery, the Mega Millions and the Powerball at the same time. Like the odds of that are 1 in 88 quadrillion that you could win the Mega Millions and the Powerball at the same time. And here we are. The fact that we're looking at only 7 of those prophecies, 100 million to 1 that Jesus could have randomly fit those. There's just no way. So it only speaks to that idea that only Jesus. Now, I love illustrations. So Peter also talks about in his book, and you may have heard this a few other times, but I think it's a really fascinating. He illustrates this even further. He said, the odds of this are like taking the entire state of Texas. And if you've ever been to Texas, it's a big state. It's a long way to travel across. But if you took the entire state of Texas, filled it with silver dollars up to 2 feet tall and covered the entire state. And then you took one of those silver dollars and you painted it red and stuck it in the middle. You blindfolded somebody and sent them on their way wandering through the state of Texas. The chances of them, and told them to pick out just one of those silver dollars, the chances of them picking out the red silver dollar are about the equivalent to 1 in 100 quadrillion. The same odds that Jesus would have met all those 7 prophecies. But here's the craziest thing about all of that, is that's just 7 of the major prophecies. There's an additional 50 major prophecies that talk about Jesus' birth and death. So the truth of the matter is, and this is kind of one of our big ideas today, is it could only be Jesus. Only Jesus could have been born and fulfilled all those prophecies. Now let's come back to the book of Psalms a little bit. So last week, Dave was kind of talking about Psalms chapter 1. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but when he talked about Psalms chapter 1, he talked about how Psalms chapter 1 starts off with the word blessed. And he talks about how it starts off with the word blessed. And he kind of talked about, whether you say blessed or blessed or any of that kind of stuff. It's kind of like tomato, tortilla, tortella, whatever. I don't know. Or, as some of us may say, measure versus measure, something like that. Whatever it is, blessed, whatever floats your boat is the way you say it. But the one thing I love about that is Psalms chapter 1 starts off blessed. Psalms chapter 2 ends with that same word, blessed, which scholars look at that and say it kind of really sets up Psalms chapter 1 and Psalms chapter 2 as kind of these 2 pillars that start off the foundation of the rest of the book of Psalms. And so we look at it, how chapter 1 starts it off and chapter 2 ends with the same word, blessed. These 2 are kind of these strong pillars. And what it does for us is it kind of the 2 pillars are Psalms chapter 1 kind of starts off by giving us a right relationship with people. That's kind of pillar number 1, a right relationship with people. And Psalms chapter 2 kind of sets up this pillar as a right reverence for our Messiah, for Jesus, a right reverence for Jesus. And when we kind of develop this strong community and we honor Jesus and the gift that he is to us, we deepen our connection with God himself and the community that we are. And so to understand that is, in order to develop that right reverence for Messiah, is kind of the second big idea that I had for us today, is developing a right reverence for Jesus and a right reverence for the Messiah, and the fact that it could only be Jesus. Now, when we go back to all the prophecies of Jesus, we can't help but think, when you stop and think that, oh, holy night, what an incredible thing, the birth of Jesus, the fact that he came to earth only for us. The 2 things that I want you to remember this morning, the 2 things that I want you to remember, just kind of said them a minute ago, but the 2 things I want you to remember is this. It could only be Jesus. Only Jesus could have fulfilled those 50 plus prophecies. Only Jesus could have been the Savior. Only Jesus could have died on a cross for you and me. And the second one, during this crazy, insane season, let's remember that he did come to this earth and he was born. And so remember, that second big idea is having a reverence for Jesus, having a reverence for our Messiah. Now, this morning, I kind of want to end with a story for you. And it's a story of this missionary woman who was teaching in this remote village in Africa. I've heard this story before, but it really hit home this week for me. Before we end this morning, I want to give you just finish. Now, before I let you go this morning, I kind of want to just end with this story about this missionary woman who was teaching in a remote village in Africa. You know, after teaching in this remote village for quite some time and getting attached to the children, she realized that her time was coming to an end. So she began to prepare the children for this idea that she would be leaving soon. And there's one day just before she left, this young boy came up to her with a present. And as she opened up that present, it was this beautiful little seashell. And the thing about it is when she looked at it, she realized, where in the world could this boy have gotten a seashell? Because there was nowhere close by that she could have gotten. Matter of fact, the closest seashore would have been at least a 3 days journey for this boy to find this seashell. She looked at the little boy and she said, "Oh my goodness," she goes, "this is way too much." She goes, "This is too big of a gift." And the little boy looked at her and he simply said this. He said, no. He goes, "You got to understand, the journey is a part of the gift. The journey is a part of the gift." During this season, remember that Jesus was a gift from God. Remember that the right reverence for that gift, who is Jesus. But also remember that discovering that gift is a part of your journey. And sometimes the season, whatever you may be going through, the longer that journey may be, the harder that journey may be, the more difficult that journey may be, the more precious that gift really is. So wherever you are at in your journey, remember your precious gift, our precious gift, Jesus, the Messiah, as we go into this season. And remember, only Holy Night. And remember this one thing, only Jesus.
Hi again. Wasn't that great, you guys? I just love church. Anyways, so thank you again for being here at Thrive Online. We absolutely love that you are here. Make sure you're staying tuned. There's a lot going on in the next, month. I guess it's December, I suppose, huh? So we're going to talk about how long we're going to be online for, Christmas plans for us as a church, and ways for you to partner in the doing good that we have going on at the end of this year. So make sure you're staying tuned and join us next week for some more, Thrive Online action and not any more Olaf. Say bye. Bye. You're not amused. Have a good week, guys.